Okay, time for this week's Fiscal Focus, brought to you by InfoChoice, your choice of information on Australian consumer finance. Now, this week we ask, are you someone who often wonders how all your hard-earned money seems to disappear so quickly? Is your spending so out of control that you don't know where it all goes? Well, perhaps you'd be interested in reading a new Australian book called Spending Fast and Slow. It's a book written by professional property investor, mortgage broker, and money coach Max Phelps, who I'm pleased to say joins us now. G'day, Max. Welcome to the Savings Tip Jar.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you on the podcast, Max. So to kick us off, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to write this book?
I'll try and give you the quick version. So look, I was raised in a family of 9 kids where money was very much a scarcity and something to be preserved. If you wanted money for something, you saved up for it and maybe you got it, maybe you didn't. And of course, then I went into a corporate world and I got a great job, earning a good career, earning good money. And throughout my 20s, I was in the corporate world and I found that as income rose, spending rose to match. And unfortunately, we were terrible with money throughout our 20s. And then in my late 30s, after a couple of years as a maths teacher, I got into mortgage broking. And as a mortgage broker, I started to have conversations with people. And I just want to pick up on something you said about, is your spending so out of control? Because the reality is over 90% of Australians do not have any control over their spending at all. So it's normal to have no control over spending. And it's to do with the way that our money is structured and also the way that our brains are wired. But I discovered some of this stuff accidentally myself and then started to observe it in other people. And so there's some changes my wife and I made 20 years ago that I then started coaching other people in how to do. But I can only see a certain number of people. And so writing a book just lets me reach more people and spread the message out there that fundamentally the banking system is not designed for humans, it's designed for robots. And if you're not one, then perhaps you need to change your interaction with it.
Now, Max, in your book, you discuss how advertising and marketing significantly influence our spending habits. So can you just elaborate on how consumers can become more aware of these influences and how they can resist them?
The truth is, most of us can't really resist them. We can resist them to a point until we can't. But there's stuff everywhere that makes us want to have, better hair, better things in our life, more of this, a bit of tasty that. And, why bother cooking that food that you went to the supermarket to buy? Why not just order in because it solves the problem a little bit quicker than searching through the cupboard and a recipe book? And so there's temptation to, buy stuff absolutely everywhere all the time. And it's gotten worse because of the internet and our phones and everything else. So we're just being bombarded constantly. And the truth is, our brains are not designed to resist that kind of temptation. We tend to give into the things that we want. We'll make a snap decision on, it'll be fine. It's fine. It's only a small amount of money. It's fine. So the problem is how do we change our interaction with it? We can't really change ourselves. And that's the whole point of the book, is that most finance books say, you need to change. You need to stop spending all that money. You need to stop, what is it you said? Spending like you're out of control. You need to stop that. It's like, no, you're always going to spend money when you can access it. So the trick is not the temptation. The trick is your access to money at the point of temptation. And unfortunately, the modern world gives us access typically to our entire pay with the tap of a card and our entire savings and our entire wealth within a few clicks of the phone. And that means that we can access an unlimited supply of money or almost unlimited supply of money. Then the temptation, how can you give into temptation? You can't. You want it, it's there, you've got the money to get it, let's do it.
That leads really perfectly actually into my next question that I have. So what are some practical strategies that we can use then to create barriers to our money when there is such easy access to money? How can we create healthy barriers without causing inconvenience for ourselves?
Yeah, so firstly, to understand that, let's think about back in the day, which is basically most of human history, where money was physical. And when money was physical, you did a week's work, you got a week's pay, and everybody knew, because you were told by your parents, grandparents, everyone else, that you didn't take your pay and put it in your pocket. That was financial suicide. You took your pay home and you hid it in envelopes, in jars, in tin boxes, under the bed, and then you walked back out the door with a little bit. Now, there was temptation everywhere at the time too, but at least if you've only got a little bit of that money on you, you can't burn through the family finances. Now, over the last 50 years, which is really only one and a bit generations, all of our money has become theoretical, digital nonsense in the sky that we can't see and touch. And we've been encouraged to use credit cards and debit cards for everything. And I still use debit cards for everything. But we typically start off by going, oh, well, we get paid into a bank account and we have card access to that bank account. That's the equivalent of taking your pay and putting it in your pocket. And then people go, oh, but you move some to a savings account. Right, but if the savings account's with the same bank, on your phone, you can then switch it back to the other one. That's like putting some of it in your front pocket and some of it in your back pocket. Okay? When you understand the physicality of money, you go, ooh, that sounds a bit silly. So maybe what we need to do is digitally hide our own money from ourselves, digitally move the money away so that it lands. My pay doesn't land in a bank account with card access. I have no card access to my pay at all. It lands in an account with no card access, and then I transfer an amount into the card I have in my pocket, a bit like the way that my parents used to take money out of home. Once you do that, the whole dynamic completely changes.
Yeah, certainly. It certainly sounds like it. And I guess, even for like when you're demonstrating to your kids, it's harder for kids to pick up now your money habits when they're not seeing everything physically, the money, the cash being spent. It's all digital. So it does, they're sort of quite visual learners, I guess. So when they're just seeing you tapping a magic money card.
Yeah, magic money card. I never forget that my youngest son, I'm stood at a barbecue at a footy thing, cooking up the barbecue. My son wanted a drink, started tugging at my pants, and then reached in without me realizing and pulled out my Medicare card and tried to buy a soft drink with a Medicare card. Because to him, what's the difference?
Yeah, there you go. That's right. So yeah, I guess it's pretty important that we find some way to teach them so that it is visual and it ties in, the delayed gratification and all those kind of old school money techniques.
But there's lots of history there that we've lost that history in one generation because the banking system is fundamentally different now to what it was in my parents' or your grandparents' generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard for you. They can't, and by the way, they're no better at it than you are. When we look at how bad people are with money, people my age are just as bad. I got my first pay packet in cash for the week, but people my age are worse with money than people your ages.
Geez, there you go. That sort of goes against some of the prevailing stigma that younger people don't so frivolously. That's
no. I see the real numbers. I get to see like what are people actually spending? How much is actually coming in? How much is actually going out? And people wildly underestimate. Another classic thing people do when we ask them the question when they're coming for a mortgage is, aside from your rent, how much is your living expenses? And people start off by going, oh, I've got my electric and my gas and my phone and my insurances, and they add them all up. And they might come to a figure of, for example, $2,000 a month. And then they assume, and then they've got variable discretionary spending. They assume it's a percentage of that figure. So if $2,000 is my bills, groceries and so on, which later on I'll talk about is not a bill, but they'll say $2,000 is what I know and understand. Therefore, in total, I'll spend 2.5. And the truth is, when we actually look at what people really spend, that figure is a percentage of the total, usually less than half. In other words, if you've added up $2,000 worth of bills, you're probably spending $4,000 to $5,000 a month.
Gee whiz.
It's purely discretionary. And people go, wait, what?
Put it that way.
How did I do that? Well, $50 on Uber Eats and $5 for a coffee and $3 for a soft drink and all these little things which psychologically you can't possibly keep track of. You can't keep track of all of what you're doing, and your bank account gives you no clues because even if you see like a really big, expense for the month, you think, oh, I spent a lot of money last month. Jesus. When you go back and look at it, the book is a play on Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. Your brain works in two modes: the sort of instant, quick decision making, which you do based on a kind of a gut feel, and then the considered decision. And your brain is constantly trying to trick you into using the instant intuitive decision-making mode. And even when you want to analyze and look at where you went wrong, and you should be using the system two thinking, which is slow and deliberate, you look for a shortcut. And so you look at your spending for the month and you look for the big ticket item. And you go, it was the electric bill came out. That's why it was a big quarter. It's like, no, it wasn't. It was the 150 little $3, $5, $7, $8, $10, $20, $30 items that came out that caused the problem. The electric bill was part of the predictable $2,000 a month that you were going to spend anyway.
Mm-hmm. I guess that somewhat illustrates, how people's money just seemingly seems to be disappearing and they don't even know how. But just on that a bit more, Max, you talk about your unique fast and slow system and how it helps savers reach their goals. Can you just tell us, how does that system work without giving away, all the secrets? I'm happy to shortcut the book, but you've got to know how it applies to you. The book will explain how to set your goals and how to work out how you as an individual or you with your partner as a couple can resolve things. But it comes down to the basics of money needs to be hidden first and spent second. Now, as soon as you do that, as soon as you move your money into an account with no access and then give yourself pocket money, you then realize that, well, when would you like to have pocket money? Well, actually, you'd like to have pocket money every week. It doesn't matter whether you're paid fortnightly or monthly. Fortnightly and monthly pay cycles were only introduced in the 70s and 80s to save companies on check fees, because they used to give checks out and get charged per check. And they realized that if they pay people fortnightly instead of weekly, they could halve their bank fees. But when you actually look at how people manage money, they'd much rather take it weekly. And now you're in control of the movement of the money. So you choose weekly and you automate yourself on a weekly amount. And so that money lands in the same day every week. You have the same amount every week. And the only thing that you're going to spend on that is the regular routine. And we would include groceries, coffees, lunches, takeaways, anything you do week in, week out. And you have a bit of money for that. Now, most of that money, apart from groceries, is wasted. It's going to be on little bits of rubbish that you will never, ever value. And when we look at where we get value, it's going to be on things like holidays. So we would always go, save up for your holidays and save up for your holidays in your future separately. But now you want a bit of money for the things that you don't do every week. And so we do that monthly. So on the first of the month, you transfer money into the same bank, that the spending bank, not the bank where your money lands, different bank altogether. Into the spending bank, you have a lump of money once a month, and then you can go, it's beginning of March. What have we got happening in March? It's my birthday. It's mum's birthday. It's our anniversary. We're going away for the weekend. It's a friend's wedding. Immediately, if I ask you what's happening for the month, it's easy to think about that. And if you've got lots going on, that's what the month's money is for. And if you haven't, go buy some clothes. Go get a new iPhone. Do whatever it is you need to do. But know that once you've spent that money and it's gone, then you need to stop spending until next month. But don't worry, there's money coming every week to make sure you can still buy your cup of coffee and still buy your groceries. That's the guts of the system. And then it's about understanding how to make that work in your life and what are the things that you need to do based on your personality. And there's a lot of it. The thing is, this is a book about people, not money. So there's lots of stories about people and what they've done and what they haven't done, and how my wife and I interact with money very, very differently with one another.
In the book, you the buckets approach was popularized by the barefoot investor Scott Pape, but in the book you're somewhat critical of it. Can you tell us why?
Oh no, I love it. I love the approach to start with. Separation of money is fantastic. The mistake that he makes is assuming that after reading his wonderful book about how his house burns down and then he and his wife learn to be very frugal, that if you read his story, you will become frugal too. And therefore, you can just deposit your pay into an ING account and spend jointly from that same bank account and pay all your bills and all of your groceries and coffees and lunches from that same account. And it's okay. And the truth is that only works for the small minority of people who are what I call tight asses, okay, of which I count myself as one. So if you are naturally predisposed to never spending money on anything, then that approach works beautifully. But for people like my wife, who is very much not a tight ass and very much on the other end of the spectrum in the spender to shopaholic category, for her, there's no way she should have card access to the same account where we pay our bills. That makes no sense at all. We used to do it, and we did it for 12 years, but every month we overspent. And we always blamed the big bills, and it wasn't at all. So the approach, it's not that I'm critical of the approach works brilliantly for people like him. And if you are like him, his approach will work also for you, which is someone who's very frugal or a tight ass. His approach will work brilliantly. If you're not like that, which is the other 90% of the population, then the buckets are fine, just the flow of money needs to be different. You flow the money differently, and you separate out bills from not bills. And discretionary spending, I always include groceries in discretionary spending, which freaks a lot of people out because they go, it's a bill. It's like, it isn't, because you choose what to buy, you choose what to put in your trolley, you choose what to cook, you choose the cuts of meat, the brand you buy, the pack size you buy, you make all those choices. And there's one great psychological study which freaks me out, but it's true. They took two groups of people that just before they did their grocery shopping, they asked them one question, and then after they measured their spending at the end. Okay. Now, these are sane, sober, rational human beings. One group of people were asked, how much have you got in superannuation? And the figure might have been like 100,000, 200,000, whatever it was. The other group of people were asked, what's the smallest note you've got in your wallet? And so they might have been thinking about, $2, $5 or $10 or something. Then they did their shopping and they came out and they compared the spending. There was a 25% difference, because the people thinking about the big number thought of every little decision in the supermarket as inconsequential. And the people thinking about the small number thought of every single decision in the supermarket as being, ooh, that feels like quite a lot. When you look at like a $12 packet of steak and you've got the figure $100,000 in your brain, it's fine. When you've got $5 in your brain, you think, geez, that's two $5 notes and a bit more. So we always include groceries in our discretionary spending. And also we found that when you give people a choice, for example, Emma, if I said to you, if we were a couple and we had a budget for the week and they go, it's $200 for the week, you've got to pay for all the groceries, and anything left over, you can spend on anything you want. Coffee with friends, hair, makeup, whatever you want to do, you spend it, whatever you don't spend on groceries. Are you going to be slightly more careful with the grocery shopping, knowing that that's the case, versus me just going, just whack it on the credit card?
That's a good point, yeah.
It is amazing how much of this all comes down to psychology, and we could talk about it for hours, but unfortunately, we are out of time. But just before we leave you there, Max, can you just give us a quick roundup on if anyone interested in buying the book, where they can get this?
Yeah, so Spending Fast and Slow, the easiest place to find it is either on Amazon, Booktopia, or in Big W. So it is in bookstores as well, but most people are not frequenting bookstores. But I've had plenty of great feedback on Big W, so you can find it online or shop at Big W, and you're good to go.
Good stuff. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Max Phelps, on the Savings Tip Jar podcast. Really appreciate your insights.
No, thanks very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.